Okay. So let's start.
Yeah, sure.
Okay. So now consider uh, we have a custom class.
Okay.
I want to use it as a key in HashMap.
Okay.
So what changes I need to do in the class so that I can consistently use it as a key in HashMap?
So I think for that we actually need to override the equals and hash code method basically so that it behaves properly. Because in the internal implementation of hash map, as soon as you do a put or get, it actually calculates the hash code, does a mod by capacity, and then checks if using the equals method, if some other object is equal to it, then it actually replaces the value, otherwise creates a new node. So I think if overriding the hash code and equals method will actually work.
Okay. So now consider hash code method returns a constant value. So
Okay.
how the hash map behave in that case?
Okay. So in case hash code returns a constant value, that means for every put you are actually going to get the same value. So it is actually going to degrade the performance of hash map, because every time it will actually land up to the same bucket basically. So within one single bucket there will be a lot of nodes that will actually be created.
Okay. What if I implement equals, but I do not implement hash code?
Okay. If you implement equals but you do not implement hash code, so I think in that case basically if you do not implement hash code, it will actually fetch the hash code from this object class, basically object class implementation. So that is basically used, that actually it will actually break the equals and hash code contract. And also that will actually use the object class hash code implementation, which internally JVM calculates based on addresses or some kind of algorithm. So I think in that case this will be the implication of not overriding the hash code method.
Okay. What if I do not override equals and only override hash code?
Yeah, so again, that will actually break the contract. And apart from this, if you do not override the equals method, then basically what will happen is, suppose you have like a custom employee object, right? So you have, for example, based on your requirement, there must be some employee ID and name. Suppose you are just checking based on employee ID and name in your overridden equals method, and now you are not doing it. So what it will do, it will again use the implementation of equals method that is there in object class. So it actually compares the values. Apart from that, it also compares the reference basically. So if in case you have two objects which have same id and name, but their reference is actually different, so in that case also it will actually consider them as unequal, and actually create a node of that particular object.
Okay.
Mm.
Now consider I have a student class.
Okay.
I want to use it as a key in sorry. I want to okay. So I have student class and I have a list of student objects. Okay.
You have a student class and
List of student
okay,
objects.
okay,
I want to sort this list based on first name.
you want to actually sort it. So you can use streams for this, like you can do a list dot streams, and then you can do a dot sorted. So sorted is one of the intermediate operations that is provided into stream, and then inside the brackets you can do s1 comma s2, and then you can use the compare to method that comparable provides for sorting purpose. So you can do e1 dot whatever is, like suppose you want to sort on name, so e1 dot get name uh, dot compare to, and in the braces you can provide e2 dot get name. So this will actually sort based on name, and as the terminal operation you can do a dot collect collectors dot to list or to set whatever is your requirement, you can do that and return back.
Okay.
Yeah.
Um, is there any other way also? Like, so any other way to do it as well without using stream?
Yeah, then in that case you can simply use implement the comparator and comparable and do it, like overriding the compare to method. You can simply do this, and inside list dot sort collections dot sort, basically you can provide list as your parameter, and then you can provide the comparator that you have created for it.
Okay. Now, consider our class person.
Okay.
It has two attributes: string name, okay, and list of string degrees.
List of string degree. Okay.
So how will you make this class immutable?
Yeah, so in order to make this class immutable, basically I have to restrict it to be modified. So I think first of all the class should be final, so that it cannot be inherited and no one can actually modify its behavior. Apart from that, the member variables have to be private actually, and and also you actually cannot provide the setters. There will be no setters for that, and I think apart from this, I think that is the only way to actually do it. Hello.
Yeah, Rohan. Yeah. So you said that we need to not give any setter and keep the class final.
Yeah, so basically, final, and also the member variables has to be private, so that none other class can actually, access it. So they have to be private and final, basically. Yeah, and I think there is no setter required.
Okay. Any other change we need to do?
Okay. Apart from that, I think we can actually inside. So there will be just one way to create it, right? So inside the constructor, actually, I think we can perform the deep copy rather than shallow cloning. Sorry, deep cloning rather than shallow cloning. I think that's it.
Okay.
Yeah.
What are the benefits of immutable classes?
What are the benefits of unmutable classes? Is it?
No, immutable. Immutable.
Okay, immutable is something that you actually cannot modify. So basically, like suppose a string is immutable in Java. So with that, you mean to say if you have suppose string str is equal to abc, and you try to do str is equal to cde, so it will actually not modify the original memory location. It will create a new one and move the reference to that. So this is because of resolving inconsistency issue. So suppose like multiple references were actually pointing to ABC, and if I modify, if it is mutable, then that ABC is modified to CD, so automatically the value of the rest of the references will actually be updated. So that will cause a certain inconsistency issue, because of which we actually create immutable classes, so that the actual memory location or the actual value is not updated. A newer memory location with the new value is actually created, and we modify the reference to avoid inconsistency issues.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now consider we have class A.
Okay.
It has a synchronized method, public void synchronized M1.
Okay.
So it is public void synchronized M1, and in this method, I'm just calling thread.sleep 10,000.
Sorry, please come again. Inside M1, you are calling?
Thread.sleep
Okay.
10,000.
Okay. Okay.
Now we create two objects of this class, O1 and O2.
Okay.
I call O1.M1 in one thread and O2.M1 in other thread.
Okay.
And then I start both the threads together.
Okay.
So what will be the behavior?
So basically, like sleep actually doesn't release the resources. So as you are using synchronized. So actually, whatever thread will actually enter it first will actually acquire a lock, and it will sleep for that particular period of time. And then so basically, other thread will actually not be able to enter, because it is actually synchronized on the same object, into same object into which it is actually trying to acquire the lock. So basically, it will actually stop the second thread to enter the synchronized block until the first thread has performed its task. Once it is done, it will release the lock, and then only the other thread will be able to enter into M1 method.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the two threads will block each other.
Not exactly
I mean, only one will go inside one time, and the other will be blocked till that time.
Yes.
Okay. What is the difference between object level and class level synchronization?
Yeah, so basically object level is there on objects, where class level is entirely on class. Just to explain with an example, like right now you mentioned that we had a synchronized method into which that particular thread was not able to go. So suppose I have two methods, M1 and M2, and I'm using static synchronize, so that will have a class level lock. So even my first thread with class level lock, even my first thread is actually in M1, the second thread will actually not be able to even execute M2. So that is class level lock, that onto that class you cannot actually even if one thread is having an access to one particular method, even the second thread cannot access the second method. That is inside the entire class, that is entire class level lock basically. And if you talk about object level lock, so that is that is just limited to a particular object. So that is specified with just the synchronized keyword. And in that case, if suppose right now you mentioned that in M1 one thread can go, so other thread can execute M2 if that is object level lock. Otherwise in class level, the other method will also be locked basically.
So previous example was class level or object level?
Yeah, that was you were using synchronized only, so that was object level lock.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the threads will only one will go or both?
No, for single method, basically, if you are doing an object level lock, and it is basically for object, so only one thread will go. If you have suppose couple of methods, right, then you will need class level lock, because see, one particular method has one particular method can be executed by one thread, and another method can be executed by other thread simultaneously, but one method will be actually accessible by one thread only.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now consider we have a parent class.
Okay.
It has two methods, walk and run.
Sorry, please come again. Which methods?
Walk and run.
Okay.
Okay. Now we have a child class which overrides both the methods.
Okay.
Both child class methods just call the respective super implementation.
Okay.
Parent class run method calls walk.
Just a second, let me
Yeah,
just grab a
yeah,
copy and pen because
yeah, no problem.
yeah. So you have a parent class into which you have a run and walk method, right?
Yes,
And into a child class, as you mentioned, it is actually overriding this run and walk method, inside which they are calling super, is it?
they are calling super implementation. So child run calls super dot run.
Okay.
Child walk calls super dot walk.
Okay.
Now, parent class run method calls walk.
Parent class run method calls walk. Okay.
Okay. Now, in the main method, we create object as parent p equal to new child,
Okay.
and then we call p dot run.
Okay.
So, what will be the order in which the methods will be called?
So here with the reference of the parent, you are actually creating the child object. So this is going to p dot run is basically going to call run method of child. So inside the run method of child, what you are doing is you are actually so run method of child will be called, and then inside that you are actually calling super dot run. That means it will actually call the run method of parent class, and inside the run method of parent you are actually calling the walk method of parent class, right?
Yes.
So that will be called, so basically
Okay.
run child, run parent and walk parent will be called in this sequence.
Okay.
Yeah.
Consider a list of integers.
Okay.
Write code in Java 8 style to Java 8 style means using Java 8 features
Okay.
to find sum of squares of all the odd numbers in the list.
Okay. Sum of squares of all the numbers in the list. That will be listed stream. Then actually you want me to find the sum of squares of all odd numbers. So I think I can use filter for that. And inside the filter I have n mod 2 not equal to 0. If n mod 2 is not equal to 0, that means it is odd, and doing a n into n. This will actually return me sum of integers of odd numbers. So you want the sum of it, right?
Yes.
Okay. So it will be something like suppose I have like you can say it will be a list dot stream dot filter. Inside filter I will have n, and with n I will do a n mod 2 not equal to 0. So that will give me that will actually I will get the this inside the if it will just return true when it will be odd. So I can do a n cross n to calculate this square basically, and after that you actually want some, I'm not sure if there is some dot sum method into it, and then I can do a collect dot collectors as list. Basically in the filter I have to do like n mod 2. If n mod 2 not equal to 0, then I can do like inside the map I can do map method I can do n with that and this lambda this dash and arrow I can do n into n, and then I think there is a method dot sum into stream basically, so I will get the sum out of it, and then I can do a dot collect whatever I want as the resultant. So I can do collectors dot to list as well.
Okay.
Yeah.
What is the difference between concurrent hash map and hash map?
Okay, so hash map is basically not thread safe, whereas concurrent hash map is actually thread safe. In case of concurrent hash map, basically whenever we do a read operation, it is not logged. Only in case of write operation, the segment basically onto which we are writing is actually logged.
Okay.
Yeah.
What is the difference between concurrent hash map and synchronized map?
Yeah, so basically synchronized map will be something which is actually completely logged if we do a read or write operation. However, in case of concurrent hash map, if you do a read it will not be actually logged, and if you do a write basically only that particular segment onto which you are actually writing will be logged. So this is a major difference between the two, that and if you talk about performance, so synchronized concurrent hash map will actually be better in performance as compared to synchronized map.
Okay. Now consider we have a table book author.
Okay.
It has two columns, book and author.
Table book author and having two columns book and author. Okay.
Yeah. So book is unique column.
Okay, this is unique. Okay.
Now you need to write a query to find all the authors who have written more than 10 books.
All the authors that have actually written more than 10 books. Okay. First of all, there will be like select author to actually return author only from book author table, where I think for the condition I think it will be think will it be something like select author from book author, where basically I may use the count method basically. So it can be count of book basically. Inside the count I can provide book is greater than 10, and then I can do a group by author.
Okay.
Yeah.
Can you frame the query and tell me?
Yeah, so it will be select author from book author, where count of book, I mean inside count method braces I have to provide book as argument, is greater than 10, and then I do a group by author.
Okay. So now, consider I have an array,
Okay.
integer array.
Okay.
You need to find two numbers in the array which give a particular sum.
Sorry, please come
So-
again. You have an integer array.
Yes. And you need to find two numbers in the array
Okay.
which give a particular sum. So, for example, so the input will be array and the sum. You need to find two numbers in the array which sum to that number.
Okay. Two numbers into an array. So we can like have okay. Two numbers which actually give that particular sum. So one way we can have a for int I loop which starts from first index to the last index, and inside that we have a for loop which actually starts from I plus 1 to the last index, like right. So for I for the first index it will actually compare, and then we can have an if condition. If a of I plus a of j is equal to that particular sum that has been provided, that means I can simply print both those numbers, so that will be the sum. In case yeah, so actually it will actually like for the first element it will compare with the rest of the elements to check the sum. For the second element it will compare with the rest of elements, likewise that.
So, what will be the time complexity?
Yeah, that will be actually high. It'll be O of n cross n, almost n square. Let me think about some other approach. Actually, what we can do is, first element, second. I have to find the sum of two pairs basically. What I think is, we within a single loop basically what we can do is like I have a loop from I starting from first to last element, and I have the sum value, right? So what I will do is, I will just simply what I will do is, suppose I start from the first element, right? into this for loop. So I will do like if suppose sum minus a of I means every element that I am accessing is equal to whatever number. If that is present in the array, that means this particular pair is there, and if that is not present, that means that is not there. So I think that will actually work in within a single loop only. If I do a sum minus a of I to check if that particular element, I will actually get the value of other number which will actually add up to the sum.
So for checking into whether it is already there or not, I mean the other number is there or not, that will also have a time complexity in itself, right?
Okay, yeah. Yes, correct. So for this actually,
How can you optimize that?
so I think for this, why not keep this into a hash map? I mean, I add all these entries to a hash map, and if I do a sum minus a of I, it will give me the number, right? Whatever number is there, for example, that I have to actually check if that is there in the in the array or not. So why not actually add all those to a hash map and just do a get contains or a contains key only. So contains key will have just O1 complexity, right?
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. What is serialization in Java?
Yeah, so basically serialization is you can say a process of actually converting this an object to a byte stream that we usually do for either saving the data to the database or whenever we want to actually let our object travel through the network, so we actually convert it into byte stream using serialization. For this we actually use serializable interface, basically implement it.
Okay. Uh, Assume I have a input wherein input is parenthesis. I mean different brackets. So you need to validate that whether it is a valid parenthesis or not.
Sorry, can you please come again?
Yeah. So input is set of parenthesis. So like round brackets, opening, closing, and all those
Okay.
nested brackets, different kinds of. So you need to check whether the string is a valid parenthesis or not.
Okay. Okay, so you have to actually check if that is valid or not. So, valid means every opening parenthesis is actually properly closing, is it?
Yeah, in right order.
Okay.
So, for example, I have a closing bracket first and then an opening, that is invalid. Or if I have a opening round bracket and then opening curly bracket and then closing round and closing curly, so again that is wrong.
Okay.
You understood what I mean?
Yes, yes, I got it. Okay, so for this, I think can we use a stack for this? Actually, like for example, we have the entire string and we one by one push to the stack this entire thing, and then while doing a pop every time, we actually check if that is we actually match basically in the pop, that if this particular closing sign is there or not during every pop operation.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So, what will be the time complexity for this?
If you talk about the time complexity, so for this, pushing will actually we push it one by one, so there will be one loop for that, and yeah, I think it will be actually O of n, because first of all we will push, like using the str.char at I, we will actually push all the get the characters and push it into the stack, and then for every pop again we will do a stack dot pop, and then there will be certain checks. That's it, I think.
Okay. Okay, so I think I'm done with the evaluation. You have any questions?
Yeah, actually, I would just like to ask, like, basically, what kind of a project is there that you guys are hiring for, and along with that, I mean, what is the technology stack that you guys are actually looking for?
Okay, as I mean, for you, exactly don't know. This is a general round, one
Okay.
for everyone. So I'm not sure for which project it is, or
Okay.
what requirement